Oh, I just realized I started this 10 minutes early. But you're not going to mind, are you? I looked at my clock wrong. But you don't mind at all. No, we're going to start early today. Because I've got a story to tell you while we're waiting for the rest of them. So, as some of you know, I've had a little trouble with my back recently. Just, muscles and sciatica and stuff. Anyway, normal stuff. And so I kept getting recommended to get an inversion table. So there's two parts to the story. One part is if I ever told you that I have this weird history of curing people's medical problems, right? I've told you that before. I cure a lot of people's medical problems, sometimes accidentally. I mean, here's one example. I had a tennis partner I used to play with every week for years. And one day he said, "Oh, I have terrible allergies, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, do you try this over the counter stuff, Allegra?" And he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you just try this Allegra stuff and it takes care of your allergies." He said, "Are you kidding?" And I think he tried the competitor to Allegra, the other one. And after decades and decades of just complete suffering, he said, that worked. So I cured somebody of one of their most vexing problems in their entire life just by saying, "Oh, have you tried Allegra?" So since that time, and because I write books about how to do things, I hear back from people that they've quit drinking. Probably hundreds of people have stopped drinking now because of something I said. Maybe hundreds or even thousands of people have lost incredible amounts of weight because I used a system instead of a goal. I've helped cure people of spasmodic dysphonia, the problem I had with my voice, similar to what RFK Jr. has, because I informed people that there was one doctor, at least, that could cure it with surgery, which is why you can hear me now. And also worked with shy bladder and a number of other things. So you've heard most of the stories. So by weird coincidence, I have in fact cured people of even uh, OCD. I cured somebody with a reframe. I've cured people of depression with reframes. Now, none of this is planned. It's not like I started my life and said, "You know what? I would like to figure out how to cure a bunch of people in random ways." But part of my story, it's a two-parter, is that I cured somebody, I think, of a back problem, not just me. Here's how I did it. I went to Amazon to buy one of those inversion tables, the thing that turns you upside down so it stretches your back. And I hit the buy button and I realized, oh, I've got the wrong address on there. And so I immediately canceled it because it was an address for a family member. And I cancel it and I redo it to my correct address. Well, too late, I discovered that it initiated both sales. So even though I'd canceled it, for reasons I don't quite understand, they delivered it anyway to some other address. So I get a call, "Hey, I've got this thing, came to the wrong address, must be yours." And I thought, well, I could return it, but you know, it's somewhere in another part of the state. Maybe somebody needs it. So I said, do you know anybody who wants it?" And said person looked around and found that there was somebody in the network who had a back problem and was looking for one. So I said, could have it for, I don't know, 20 cents on a dollar or something. So I gave them a inverter table. Now, I put together my own because my own came to my house, and sure enough, it really makes your back feel better. So it works. So I've accidentally, by pushing the wrong button on Amazon, cured a stranger's back problem somebody will never meet because I know it works. And, it's kind of expensive. It's like $500. I don't know if anybody would just sort of try it on their own. But if you get one for $100, and somebody did. So somebody's got a good back who may be thanking me in Southern California. But here's the funny part. So I get my own inverted table, and I'm getting ready to assemble it. And the first thing I realize is that there are many, many parts to the assembly, and it's all going to be this stuff that's awkward to hold, and you need three hands. You know, like you have to hold the thing while you're putting three screws in that don't go quite through the holes the right way, and you know you have to have at least six hands. So I said to myself, "There's no way I'm going to assemble that without hurting my back." And sure enough, it's really hard on your back to assemble that frickin' thing. So by the time I was done, I was like, ah, I can't believe I have to twist myself in pretzels to put this thing together. But I get it together. Now, the other thing you need to know is that when I assemble anything or do any kind of home improvement, I can usually get it done, meaning that if I apply enough, brute force and mental power, I can figure things out. I don't like to. So that's where people get me wrong. It's not that I can't figure out how to do stuff around the house. I just don't want to. And one of the reasons I don't want to is that I have one of these themes in life that when I do any kind of home improvement, eventually I'm going to need a tourniquet or something to stop the bleeding. So sure enough, part of my arm looks like Beirut now. For a large part of the device fell on my hand or on my arm just the right way to rip the top layer of flesh off and expose me to bleeding that lasted about a day. So when I try to improve my health, I tell you, it's a struggle. I know I'm going to need a tourniquet. I knew I was going to hurt my back, and I had to buy two of them to get one. So that's what it took. However, here's the good news. I think it worked. Between not sleeping on my bed anymore, I had to get rid of my bed. I mean, in terms of sleeping on it. So I spent 4 days sleeping on a massage table because it's firm. So I just had a temporary massage table set up. And between that and the inversion table and this little back warmer I got on now, I have never felt better. After 30 years of back problems, solved. So this is a good news story. The golden age has begun with my back feeling better than it's felt in probably 25 years. So there's that. I would like to read you the wake-up quote of the day. This is from Zuby. You should all be following Zuby on X. I think many of you know Zuby. Listen to this one sentence and see if this doesn't wake you up. All right? It can't be mere accident that schools and universities don't teach kids about nutrition and money. Ouch. Oh my God. Does that hit hard today? It can't be an accident that schools and universities don't teach kids about nutrition and money. Holy shit. Because that's how they feed us garbage, and it's how they steal your money. If you understood money and nutrition, nothing would look the way it looks. Your health would be different. Your finances would be different. I don't know. This hit me like a ton of bricks. That there might be a reason that they don't teach this. Now, I don't think that they had a meeting and decided don't teach this. I think that just the incentive system was subtly against informing people how things work, because there's trillions of dollars to be made as long as the public doesn't understand how anything happens. Wow. Zuby with a win. As an X account called Infographics notes, that the researchers lately are really crushing it. For example, CNN's reporting that there's a new study that the more active you are, it'll extend your life expectancy. Did anybody know that exercise is good for your health? Apparently it is. Exercise is good for your health and your longevity. And not to be outdone, the BMJ group did a study and said that the people over 40 would live 5 extra years if they were as active as the top 20%. Huh. So not only is exercise good for you, but the people who do more of it get more benefit from. Well, I don't know how they would have known that without studying it. Or you could have just asked Scott. Would have saved you a lot of money. Yes, exercise. Still good for you. Nothing changed since the last time. Meanwhile, University of Washington is developing these cool headphones using AI, I guess, to create what they call a sound bubble. Now, this is like a way cooler idea than you think it is. So right now, you probably have some noise canceling headphones, such as these, but it cancels all the noise. So if somebody wants to talk to you, you can't hear them too well as the other noise. And it's not perfect either. But they've developed some kind of headphones where you can hear voice if the voice is close to you. In other words, if somebody wanted to walk up to you while you're listening to your headphones and they just talk to you in a normal voice, you would hear it in a normal voice. Is that cool? It's like the smallest invention, but you can see how it would change your experience. It's like, oh, I hate taking my headphones off. Oh, I hate not knowing if somebody can hear me. But it will make things different in the gym. Do you know what is the greatest thing for women's health? It's earbuds. Do you know why? Because then women can go to the gym and be in don't talk to me mode, and it's harder for guys to approach them. Because if you have to go up and say, hey, signal them, hey, do you mind? Do you mind? I'm a complete stranger. I want to make conversation, but maybe you could stop listening to whatever you're doing and take out your earbuds or your headphones. Like, that's a hard one. I've seen people do it, by the way. I've seen strangers asking other people to take their headphones out so they can chat. But it's harder. It's much harder. So headphones make women safe in gyms. It's good for their health. I'm glad you asked me. Did you know that stress can scramble your brain so badly it changes your memories, according to study finds? So the more stress you have, the less successful your memory is. But not only does it not remember well, it can actually give you a false memory. Now, let's tie that into the headlines. Are you ready for this? Yeah, this is science that matters. If fear makes your memory worse, do you think that fear could also make you more likely to believe a hoax? I suspect yes. Because if fear makes it difficult to accurately remember a real thing, it wouldn't be a big stretch to imagine that fear could make you believe a hoax. For example, if I could make you really afraid of Trump, could I then easily make you believe that he said something positive about Hitler? Yes, I could. Because I've scared you into basically a fake memory of what Trump is and what he's done so far. If I can get your fake memory about what he's done so far, it's easy to introduce a new hoax because you'll say, well, that's exactly what I was expecting from somebody who did these things that didn't really happen. So watch out for fear persuasion because it can change your memories as well, I think. I've been telling you for a long time that the most powerful technology in the future will be holes, like literally just holes in the ground. And you see it a little bit with the Boring Company. Maybe it's going to help transportation by allowing you to use tunnels to get to places. I don't know about that, but I was always thinking geothermal. But here's something I found out that is just another sign of the golden age. I thought that geothermal power was really pretty much just drilling a deep hole until you got to some hot water. And then once you got to some hot water, you could turn it into energy because you can turn heat into energy basically heat into energy. Well, heat is energy. You know what I mean. You can turn it into productive energy. But it turns out that according to an article in Nature, there are a bunch of new and innovative geothermal techniques that do not depend on finding hot water. So you can just go down deep enough that it's hot with or without the water. So you just have to go so down it's hot. But you can even create, I think I have this right, a U-shaped tunnel or a U-shaped hole. And if it's U-shaped, you can pump your own water into it. It becomes superheated because it's so far down in the earth. And then when you pump it up the other side, heated water. So you get your energy for free, even if you didn't have a source of water at the bottom of it. Now that's one of them. There's another one where they drill more sideways than down, and somehow that gives them some advantage. But the point is, there are several now geothermal alternative methods. One is like fracking. So there's the standard, there's the fracking, there's a U-shaped, at least one other. And geothermal is almost unlimited. So all we have to do is figure out sort of incrementally by trial and error which ones of these works better and tweak it a little bit. And it could be that geothermal is the biggest energy of the future. That would totally be possible, because nuclear is always going to be dangerous, with its own, well, it'll always feel dangerous and take a long time and be expensive. Elon Musk says that solar will be the main source of energy in the future. I say that's true if we get our battery storage right and our grid right. All you'd have to do is put solar on every roof, and you have energy everywhere. You just need to be able to use it locally. Right now, we don't have the grid to do that, but it's getting there. Well, speaking of Musk, on CNBC, Ron Barron, who's a famous investor kind of guy, was talking about Tesla stock. And he says that the stock price now of Tesla is about the same as it was 3 years ago. And he says he thinks it's going to be worth $5 trillion in 10 years. $5 trillion. We do have a few $1 trillion companies, like 1 trillion just recently, but 5 trillion in 10 years. And then that's just the first part. I'm not done yet. Right? That's what the investor thinks. He says Elon believes that even longer term it could be 30 trillion. He thinks the Optimus robot is going to be his biggest business ever. And then Ron Barron ends with, "No way I'm selling Tesla." Now, I own Tesla stock, so that's my full disclosure. So don't buy any stocks or do any investments because of something you heard on this show, right? It might sound like a good idea, but I assure you, I'm not that good at investing that you should follow my lead. I'll tell you what I'm doing because it's part of disclosure, and it's also part of how you think about it. So if I tell you something, it's because it's more about teaching you some concept of investing. For example, I have the smaller part of my portfolio has some Bitcoin and some NVIDIA and some Tesla stock, because those are three things that could go through the solar system. I mean, they could go so high, it'd be crazy. But I wouldn't put 90% of my money in those things. So there's your finance lesson. You want most of your money to be in things that you think are diversified and are going to be fine, like the index of the Fortune 500, for example. But you might want a good solid 10 to 20% in a little basket of things that if any one of them went big, it would go so big you couldn't even believe it. That's what NVIDIA and Tesla and Bitcoin all have in common. If they go big, and they're already pretty big, there's almost no limit. It's just almost an uncapped potential. You don't see that. That's not something you're going to see if you invest in Coca-Cola or even Apple Computer. So yeah, these are really, really special kinds of things. I also have an investment in I think it's NLR. It's an index of nuclear power technologies and companies. That one, I don't know how fast it'll grow, but I like the idea of it. Anyway, again, I don't recommend these stocks. These are not recommendations. These are lessons. Let's see. Apparently, major companies are returning to advertise on X. So IBM, Disney, Comcast, Warner Brothers, Discovery. And Elon has thanked them all. So apparently, the fact that X is just an excellent place to advertise compared to the alternatives, apparently, because one assumes that they wouldn't be coming back unless advertising there worked. I think bang for the buck, it's probably among the best places to advertise. I would guess. I'm no expert, but I'll bet that's true. Um, Now, I told you that solar might be the new power of the future, but only if you can store it in batteries, and which means we probably need more lithium for your robots and your cars and all that. Well, according to New Atlas, there's some new research at Rice University where they can grab almost all of the lithium from geothermal sources. Oh, geothermal again. So apparently, geothermal that has brine in it, salt brine, has a lot of lithium in it. And they figured out some new technology to get it out of there. Oh, it looks like they built a 3-chamber reactor that has a newly developed lithium ion conductive glass ceramic membrane. So it looks like they're using some kind of a filter to just sort of filter it out electronically and otherwise. So these are small technologies, but if any one of these makes lithium really cheap, everything changes. Imagine if the cost of lithium just went down 90% because somebody built a better filter to take it out of the ground. That's the sort of thing that could happen. Like just you wake up one day and lithium is 90% less. Could happen. SciTech Daily says there's some weight breakthrough. They found some natural compound in your body. If they give you a little bit more of it, you're not hungry. I guess it affects how your brain registers hunger. So Baylor College of Medicine, the Stanford University School of Medicine, and their collaborators came up with that. Will that work? I don't know. but there's a lot going on. If the biggest health problem in the country is being overweight, there's a lot going on that's going to help push that in the other direction. And one of them might be this. It would be a competitor to Ozempic, I guess. But if it works, great. Well, here's a weird little story that doesn't make sense out of context. So Russia is going to restrict enriched uranium exports to the United States. Now, it's sort of a response to some restrictions that are being put on Russian trade, but it's also not that big a deal. So it's sort of like, why are they even doing it? It's not going to hurt us that much. It's not big a deal, but it sounds like it's kind of important because it's uranium and they're one of the biggest sources. We're not really going to run out of uranium, but why would Putin even throw this little deal into the mix? Well, I have a hypothesis, and it goes like this. I believe that everybody is waiting for Trump, and they're waiting for the big dog to settle all the little fights with little dogs. The biggest fight is Ukraine and Russia situation. And if Putin is as smart as I think he is, and he's definitely as smart as I think he is, strategically, he can play some chess. You know what I mean? Like I've never heard a story of whether Vladimir Putin whether he plays chess or not, but I assume he does. And I just have a feeling he'd be good at it, like strategically. Even if you think he's an evil monster, he's pretty good strategically. Here's why I think he's throwing this in the mix. I don't think it's just a tit for tat that we do a little trade restriction, so he does a little trade restriction. I think it's smarter than that. I think that both Trump and Putin are the two smart negotiators who could figure out the following thing. If you make it just about the Ukraine-Russia war, you're idiots. You're idiots. All right? let me say that again. If Putin and Trump negotiate the end of and of course Zelensky, negotiate the end of the Ukraine war, and they limit the discussion to the end of the Ukraine war, they're idiots. Now, you know what they're not? Not idiots. Here's the good news. The good news is they're both really good at negotiating. So you know what they're going to do? They're going to throw in all this other stuff, and they should. That's how you get the deal. The deal is you throw the extra stuff in there because you're like, oh, I don't know, we're not getting enough out of this Ukraine stopping fighting thing, but wouldn't you guys like to have a better source of uranium? Because you're going to need it for all the AI and the nuclear power plants. And we say, we would. Actually, we would like that. And then Russia would say, you know what, we'd like a little less tightening on some of this other trade over here. And we'd say, you know what, we'll give you that. So if Trump and Putin figure out how to throw more stuff in it, I think there'll be there could be a nuclear weapons testing treaty. There could be something about, China. I think that would be a long shot. But I've noticed that Russia is playing the Joe Manchin strategy. So Joe Manchin, he was one of those few senators who could go either way. And so because he could go either way, he had all the power, it seemed like, because he could vote as a Democrat or he could vote with the Republicans. And everything was so close that it would end up being, well, looks like it's down to Joe Manchin again. So what Putin has done, which I think, again, is clever, is he's put himself right between the United States and China. So Russia, as a military or economic power, is tiny compared to either the United States or China. But if you Joe Manchin it and you go right in the middle, you have all this weird power. So that's what he's done. He became the Joe Manchin of countries. It's like, well, I could agree with China on this. What do you have to offer? Oh, I could agree with you too. So it's kind of brilliant where Putin's stationed himself. So that also gives him something to negotiate. So if Trump says to him in some form, you know what we'd really like is we'd really like Russia to be more, let's say, friendly with the United States and less friendly with China. That's something that Putin has to negotiate now. He created an asset out of nothing. That's Trump style. Trump is the expert of creating an asset out of nothing so he can negotiate it away later. like Mexico is going to pay for the wall. He just creates that out of nothing, and it's something he can give up, and it feels like he met in the middle. All right. So there are still, believe it or not, some voting irregularities that are being looked into. In Oregon, there's a House of Representatives, Tracy Kramer, who was ahead by 500 votes. And then there was a new dump of votes. And guess what? She lost by 1 vote. She was ahead by 500. And coincidentally, the new batch of votes was exactly the right number to make her lose by 1. So clearly there's going to be some challenges there. Now, does that mean that it's rigged? Well, there's no proof of that. Does it look exactly like it's rigged? Well, yeah. It looks exactly like it's rigged, but that doesn't mean it is. We're in a weird place where you have to challenge everything. I would certainly challenge this one. You can't do something that looks this rigged and then just walk away. I mean, you're going to have to look under the hood on this one. Meanwhile, over in Bucks County, according to Breitbart News, there are ballots missing, and there's a lot of problems over in Bucks County. So it does seem that there are at least 3 situations that are ongoing where the vote counting is in question. It doesn't make you feel too comfortable, does it? Well, if you haven't seen the clip of Bill Maher dumping on Democrats that was produced, I guess, last night on his show, oh, you have to watch it. Because, I always talk about Bill Maher being, willing to criticize the Democrats as well as the Republicans, and I do appreciate that. That's good stuff. He's got TDS, of course, but outside of the narrow cone of TDS, He is very, very good compared to most people in being able to see the whole field. Very rare for any of the public figures to even be able to do that. So here's what he said. I'll just paraphrase a few things. He did suggest that Democrats thinking that Republicans are the dumb ones might be just the opposite. So I don't think it's true that either one is the dumb one, but he's definitely going to debunk the idea that the Democrats are the smart ones and the Republicans are the dumb ones. So he's definitely off that train, right? Now, and he's very off it. Like he's completely off Democrats smart, Republicans dumb. He's abandoned that completely. It's just not. There's just no evidence for it, and he's just watched Democrats be so dumb that you can't even believe it. So he's abandoning Republicans dumb. Now that's kind of a big deal. Do you realize how big a deal that is? Because Republicans be dumb is pretty much the stereotype that the country has been operating under, the anti-Republican part of the country. And I think that Bill isn't the only one who might be abandoning that idea. Anyway, so he also said maybe Democrats would be better if they would maybe stop acting like the people that voters would want to punch in the face. Okay, that's just a perfect line. That is a perfect line. Stop acting in a way that makes everybody want to punch you in the face. Now, I, of course, am against violence, but as a humorous way to express things, that fits. When I watch MSNBC, I have to actively curb my feeling of punching the television because their faces all look punchable. And I talk about this all the time. Their facial expression doesn't match what they say in such a, uncanny valley kind of a way. You don't even know what you're seeing. Are they lying? Are they crazy? Are they demented? Do they have bad information? And you're just trying to figure it out. Like, why does the face not match the words? And what am I watching? So yes, even Bill Maher has noticed that his side has the most punchable faces. I think that probably, maybe that changes over time. There may be times when the Republicans have more punchable faces, but at the moment, I think the Democrats have I think they've got that locked up. Bill Maher also goes, he says the Democrats have an anti-common sense agenda. Yes, yes. How about maybe that's the whole story? Maybe that's the whole story, that the policies don't even look like they make sense. It's not like you're choosing among, well, that's a good idea, but that's a good idea too. Which of these two good ideas is slightly better? It's nothing like that. There's one batshit crazy and one that might work and it might not. It's not like you're comparing, equals. And he also criticized Democrats for their, quote, shitty exclusionary attitudes. Yes. So he's doing great. And I'm like, yes, Bill, go Bill, go Bill. I'm like rooting for him. I'm feeling like he's crossed into some like higher level of awareness, which is, it's what I say when people agree with me. So since it's me talking, I get to set the level of awareness in my own little subjective world. So when I see him talk like this, I'm like, whoa, Bill, you've come out of your TDS and you've recognized that the things that the Democrats say are not sensible in many, many times, and that they're lying to you and they're not the smart ones. And then he ended by saying that the Democrats didn't even do much. Oh, he ended by saying that because they're so bad at their politics, that the things he cares about the most, that Democrats can protect the best, are not being served. So here are the two things. After Bill Maher criticizes the Democrats for being idiots, he says the two things he cares about the most were, number one, losing democracy, and number two, climate change. Okay, Bill, you just lost all of your credibility. Losing your democracy? What? Who told you you're gonna lose some democracy? The Democrats, the people you said are idiots with the punchable faces, just made up a thing that you're gonna lose your democracy. Completely made up. I mean, they looked at January 6th, but most of that's imaginary as well. So they've got this made up thing, and after Bill Maher criticizes them about being idiots, he tells you that he's really worried about losing his democracy because the country elected in a landslide the person who would most protect their freedom of speech, their gun rights, and pretty much all their other rights. Yeah. And that's what he's worried about, losing his democracy. And then he said climate change. Now, as you know, I don't know if climate change is caused by people or how much of it is caused by people. A little bit. I don't know if it's going to be dangerous or not dangerous. What I'm sure of is that nobody else knows either. That's the only part I'm sure of. So after going through this whole thing about how dumb the Democrats are, and even criticizing them specifically for being bad on science, because he criticized them about the pandemic and about mask wearing 2 years later. So he's very specifically saying the Democrats get science wrong. And they says climate change is his biggest concern besides losing his democracy. Now, do you see it? Do you see that it looked like he was all the way out of his TDS, but in fact, he's all the way in? The two things he cares about aren't even real. They're not even real. So anyway, he's almost there. Here's my favorite dumb Democrat thing. So is it Eli or Ellie Mistel, who appears on MSNBC a lot? And he said that, so this is the Democrats figuring out what they did wrong and then correcting it, all right? So this is MSNBC is one of their regulars, figuring out what they did wrong, and then here's his suggestion for correcting it. He says liberals need to build their own Joe Rogan. Oh. Do you see any pattern here? The pattern where the anti-Trump people don't know how anything works? Like anything? Now, it's not so bad that they don't understand that a large, complex model for predicting the temperature of the Earth in 80 years isn't real. I can see how they'd be fooled by it, because a lot of people are fooled by that. But sometimes there are easy things, like if you create a set of incentives, that will cause people to move toward the incentive. And somehow that part's invisible to Democrats. But here's my favorite one. How do you build a Joe Rogan? I'm gonna make a little a confession. If I knew how to be Joe Rogan, I would have done it by now. If anybody else in the whole fucking universe knew how to be Joe Rogan, they would have done it by now. Now, every now and then, there's a superstar that emerges. Megyn Kelly, good example. But she wasn't trying to be Joe Rogan. Do you know who she was trying to be? Megyn Kelly. Nailed it. And I could mention, PBD, great production, great guests, great show. You can't create that. You can't build that. These happen organically or they don't happen at all. And here's the hard part. Does anybody know why Joe Rogan is popular? Well, he does everything right. So it's sort of everything. But if I were to pick one thing, it's that he has common sense and he's an ordinary person who doesn't have any mental illness that is identifiable. Like, he's just common sense. So That's what makes him so appealing. When anybody watches it, like, you don't have to agree with his love of eating elk. I don't eat elk, so I don't have to bond with him. I don't have any hobbies in common with him. I don't like ice. I don't want to do an ice plunge. I don't want to go hunting. I don't want to grill. I don't want to do any UFC fighting. But I love the fact that he loves it, and that when he talks about it, it's, like a regular person, and I learn things. So you can't make a Joe Rogan. A Joe Rogan is born, and then a whole bunch of things have to happen just right, and then bam, you turn around one day and there's a Joe Rogan. Well, I mean, Joe Rogan works at it for 10 years before he's Joe Rogan. But to imagine the Democrats think they could just build one. Let's just build ourselves a Joe Rogan. It's like not understanding how anything works in the actual real world. It's just amazing. Well, my relative Eric Adams, mayor of New York City. No, we're not actually related, but we have the same last name. Um, Eric Adams, I keep having this love-hate sort of reaction to him because he's a super common sense guy. He's a Democrat, so I'm all ready to disagree with him on a bunch of stuff. But then when he talks, he starts making sense. It's like, oh, the migration thing is out of control. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're a Democrat. Oh, okay, just common sense. And so he's on The View and talking about what the Democrats got wrong. And he said that when people talk to him, they're talking about prices, basically, what they can afford. He says, quote, they're not talking about Hitler. They're talking about housing. They're not asking me, Eric, tell me about fascism. They're talking about finance. And I'm thinking, watching Eric Adams, a common sense kind of guy, tell the Democrats that the whole stealing your democracy, Hitler, fascist thing doesn't connect with anybody because we're just not registering it as real. If it were real, it would definitely work. But we don't really register it as real. It just sounds like something that weirdos are saying. So let me do an abrupt left turn. Here's one you didn't see coming, okay? So I just told you that you cannot make a Joe Rogan. You can't just say, hey, I'll decide to make a Joe Rogan. We need one of those. The Democrats already have one, if they can keep him out of jail. Eric Adams would be a great podcaster, right? If Eric Adams gets out of politics, and he's got some legal problems, which could be bigger than I think. But if he gets out of his legal problems somehow, and he gets out of politics, could he have a podcast that would make you interested? Yes, I would watch his podcast. Do you know why? Because like Joe Rogan, he says common sense things which are on point and make sense to me, and I can relate to them. Yes. But here's the thing. You could not create an Eric Adams. Eric Adams had to create himself. So he exists. You could take the opportunity that he's created, but the problem is he doesn't agree with all your Democrat bullshit. So the Democrats can't use a common sense guy because it wouldn't agree with their policies. But yes, Eric Adams could have a huge podcast. He has all the tools. He's great on camera. I love the way he thinks, and he has a way of talking that connects with people, everyday people, same as Joe Rogan. So they have one. It's just that if you want somebody who talks common sense like Joe Rogan, it's not going to work out for your brand. It doesn't work out. Well, Vivek, saying something that many of us are thinking. He said on a post on X, it took a band of small government revolutionaries to start this country. It'll take a band of small government revolutionaries to save it. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. It's funny how much all of us felt this thing. Now, I tried to come up with a phrase for it early on. You've heard Greg use it as well, Greg Gutfeld. But a number of people who used it, the pirate ship. analogy, that it seemed like Trump has always been able to do this. Trump used to be best friends with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson lived in his building. They would hang out. Like he was a guy who could be friends with anybody. So from any walk of life, and he has that ability to just relate to everybody. McDonald's, garbage truck, everything. So it's no surprise that Trump could attract a pirate ship full of people. But then I saw one of the actors from the Avengers say that he was assembling the Avengers. And I said, oh, that's pretty good too. I can feel that. A whole bunch of completely different people with superpowers. Elon's got his superpower, and Vivek's got his superpower, and JD Vance, and basically a bunch of Avengers. But I also like the refounding idea that Vivek is talking about here, that weirdly these characters map so well to the founders that it's just hard to ignore. It just is the same energy. And it makes you wonder if there isn't some kind of natural balancing thing in our DNA or in our culture or in the world or in our simulation or in physics or something, where we get to this point where the entire civilization looks like it's coming off the rails. And then suddenly there's this feeling that's like a feeling that's like, do we have a pirate ship that just formed? Did the Avengers just assemble? Did the founders just come back alive, through reincarnation or something? But whatever this is, I can feel the hell out of it. And I'm hearing a lot of other people say the same. You can feel this. Whatever this is, it's the right people at the right time doing the right stuff in a big, big way. And wow, it's incredible. And now Senator Bernie Sanders announced that he'd work with Trump. He would work with Trump on the credit card interest rate cap at 10%. Now, I don't know for sure if capping it at 10% is the right answer. Some of you are going to say, but Scott, if you cap the interest rate, then there will be much less interest offered to the public because some credit card companies won't be able to make it, so they'll close down, and et cetera. To which I say, and? Yeah, but fewer people would be able to get a credit card, Scott. And where's the problem there? If the only people who are not getting credit cards are the ones with bad credit, are we worse off? Would this not create some discipline among the credit card companies themselves to either get out of business or figure out how to operate where 10% is enough, because 10% is enough everywhere else? Everywhere else, 10% is enough. Now, they might have to be much tougher about who they give credit to, but isn't that good that there's not a bunch of, why am I paying for all those people with bad credit? Like, why is that for me to pay? Because somebody else has bad credit. That's how it works, right? They've got to overcharge the people with good credit to pay for the bad people with bad credit. So if you can put Bernie Sanders and Trump on the same pirate ship, something's going right. Now, let me say clearly, I haven't looked into the price cap argument on both sides yet. So there might be an argument against it. I just haven't heard it. Meanwhile, the New York Post says that the World Bank is fearing budget cuts from Trump. And this is after reportedly the World Bank lost $24 billion that they don't know where it went. And that they're, quote, running around like headless chickens. Okay, once again, do you see the pattern? The world is sorting itself out just because Trump was elected. So people are making changes that they should have already made, and they're like winding down the dumbest stuff just because he's close. This is the most dad's coming home thing you've ever seen in your life. It's like, kids, you better settle down because dad's coming home in 10 minutes. He's coming home in 10 minutes solved 20% of the nation's problems. Like, what the hell is he going to do when he gets in office? If 20% of our problems just solve themselves, he's got Bernie joining his side. Meanwhile, Stephen King says he's quitting X. Some people said he didn't quit yet, but he claims the atmosphere has just become too toxic. Breitbart News is reporting this. Now, do you think that Stephen King had anything to do with the toxic nature of the conversations he was in? You might literally be in the dictionary under toxic. Like toxic. Let's see, Tox. Oh, there's Stephen King. But don't you wonder if he was ever organic? Do you wonder if Stephen King just made his own decisions about wading into politics? Or didn't it feel like he was just working for a paycheck? Now, I'm not saying he was working for a paycheck. It's just that if you observed, he was somebody who was creating nothing good of value. He was just making himself less popular by making half the country hate his books because of his politics. Why was he even involved in the first place? Doesn't it feel like there was some external force that might have been behind it? Like, I don't know what, but it just doesn't feel organic. And what about some of the other prominent voices? I think you're going to see disappear too. Meanwhile, according to the Daily Wire, Virginia Kruta is writing that Anna Navarro on The View called on Biden to give pardons preemptively to people like Hunter Biden and let's see who else. She wants a preemptive pardon for Vice President Harris. Why does she need a preemptive pardon? So she's worried about lawfare, right? Did Kamala Harris break a law that I don't know about? Has anybody alleged that Kamala Harris broke a law? Did I miss a story? Why does Anna Navarro think that she would need a pardon? Did she do something we don't know about? Sort of raises a question, doesn't it? Now, I know what she's trying to do to say that she thinks that Trump's going to go after all of his adversaries, but Kamala Harris is not an adversary. She is a thoroughly beaten, irrelevant figure that the longer she's around, the better it makes Trump look. Kamala Harris has less to worry about from Trump than she does from, I don't know, mosquito bite or something. The last thing Trump's going to do is double down on dunking on the most defeated candidate in the history of defeated candidates. So no, she's safe. She also thinks the January 6th committee members, oh, here we go, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, and maybe even the special prosecutor Jack Smith, should get preemptive pardons. Well, I would tell you, as others have said, that would make all of these people look super guilty. If you give a preemptive pardon to anybody, I'm going to assume they're guilty, because otherwise, why'd you need that? And I do think the January 6th committee have done enough that the public can see looks sketchy and frankly illegal, that to me, that's the edge case. I don't want Trump to do anything that's just pure lawfare. If he went after Kamala Harris, and I've not heard of anything, even an alleged crime, but if he started digging into something, I wouldn't be in favor of that. But if you talk about the J6 committee, I think they destroyed the whole fucking country for 4 years. And I think they knew they did it. I think they knew they were lying. And I think that what they did was one of the greatest crimes I've ever seen committed in public. And I think they need to answer for it. I think there needs to be accountability. Now, did they break a law? I don't know. If they didn't, then I certainly don't want them to go to jail or even be charged if there's no law that's even, allegedly broken. But yes, there is something very, very bad that was done by some very specific people right in front of us, and I don't think we can overlook that. But again, if there's no crime, there's no crime. Got to walk away. Anyway, Trump has appointed a new press secretary. Her name is Caroline Leavitt, or Levitt, I guess. How would you pronounce Leavitt? Leavitt or Levitt? Because this will matter to the joke I'm about to make. I'm preparing a dad joke in my mind. It's very amusing, but it will depend on you telling me which way to pronounce her name. Because one way, oh, damn it, some people are saying it's Levitt. Damn it. That's not going to be nearly as funny. Well, can I give you a recreational joke that would have been a lot funnier if her last name were pronounced Leavitt? She would be the press secretary for the deporter in chief, the guy who ran for office promising to deport 20 million people, and he would have as his spokesperson somebody named Leavitt. Now that would have been funny, except her name is Levitt. Well, that's no good. Come on, simulation. You're so close to having a good match there. I'm going to call her Leavitt. Yeah, Leavitt. That's what I say to Snickers. Well, you've seen a bunch of Democrats complain about RFK Jr. and all of the terrible things he's going to do when he gets power over our pharma and medical situation. But have you noticed anything about the complaints? Have you noticed that the complaints about RFK Jr. all have something in common? What is it that all the complaints about RFK Jr. have in common? Let's see if you can spot it. What do all the criticisms about him for this job, specifically for this job, what do they have in common? They're all made up. They're all imaginary. Like every one of them. Like not some, every single one of them is made up. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. He's getting the full Trump treatment where they have to completely make up stuff and act like they're really trying to sell it with their faces. So they say stuff like he wants to stop vaccinations. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He wants better science so that we know whether we're doing a good job. Who doesn't want better science? They're saying he wants to end pesticides. Does he? No. But I'm sure he wants to study it and make sure that we know what's safe and what isn't. And if that meant banning some pesticides because we learned more and the science was solid, we would be all very happy if he did that. Why is that a criticism? He's not going to do it if there's no data. Uh, he says, then they criticize him for not being a doctor. I don't really feel like that would have helped us. Do you think the doctors are the right people to get this done? No. I think somebody who has no fear whatsoever of anything physical or embarrassment or anything else, and somebody who's been deeply into it, as he has for years, is exactly the right person. He wants more testing and more science. So the guy who wants more science and is insisting on more science and insisting on the good kind is being criticized by the Democrats for being anti-science. You can't get further from the truth than the guy who wants the most science and better science is the guy who doesn't understand and doesn't want science. It's literally opposite, and it's all imaginary. Now, this is one of those cases where the deep state is kind of useful. I could be worried about RFK Jr. if I thought he would be working alone and just sitting in a room making his own decisions about stuff, but that's not going to happen. He's going to have an army of scientists and experts who are trying to talk him out of it and pointing him at different studies. And he's going to say stuff like, I see your study, but it's not good enough. Show me a good long-term study. So I think we're in good shape there. I saw Molly Hemingway do a great defense, I think it was on Fox News, of Matt Gaetz as a choice for Attorney General. And this is a good case. So her angle on it is that Gaetz would be the most effective at fighting information ops. And I thought, that's true. Matt Gaetz has been one of the most effective, best communicators and most aggressive going after all the ops, such as the Russia collusion ops, the 51 people signing the laptop op, all the other ops. He's one of the top people going after them. So I agree with that, Molly Hemingway, that having somebody who would fight against the misinformation structure, that feels like something I want. Now, I'm not completely talked down at the idea that maybe Matt Gaetz is not let's say maybe it's a plan A, but that they have a plan B ready already. In other words, they might already have a plan B in case he can't get through for one reason or another. But it sure would be fun if he did. I would sure like to watch it. Meanwhile, over on MSNBC, where everybody's a terrible racist, they have this lawyer, Maya Wiley, on, who they put on to defame Pete Hegseth, who was picked as defense secretary. And she claims that he's got a white supremacist tattoos all over his body. False. 100% false. And she sat there and said it between two white guys who just nodded. They let her say that without any pushback. MSNBC is such garbage. And then she also said about him, he is also a person, if he's in the job, who will be having the discussion with Donald Trump about sending the military into communities to police U.S. citizens. Again, just some made-up stuff. Will the military be useful in transporting illegal migrants back to their place of origin? Yes. Transport. They'll drive them. Basically, they're chauffeurs. I mean, not the kind they want, because it's going to take them out of the country. But no, it'll be ICE and the people who are hired to do the deportations will do it. Now, there's no plan to use the military to police the communities. Meanwhile, Trump is looking at least considering a fellow named Dr. Asim Malhotra for a key health role in revising our nation's food policies. Hello. So this would include, if this happens, the doctor would be looking at basically our processed foods and looking at targeting them for either labeled as unhealthy or decreased in our diet in some ways. So they would introduce the cigarette-style warning labels on packaging. And apparently, according to the Daily Mail, some of these kinds of measures were successful in the United Kingdom. There was a 2018 sugar tax that led to a significant reduction in sugar consumption and prompted manufacturing to reformulate their products. Then this is according to Resist the Mainstream. That's a publication, I guess. Let me tell you how much I love about this. Everything. Do you remember when people said, Trump's a fascist? Well, my understanding of a fascist is somebody who works with the big companies, almost as if they're on the same team. This is very much targeting the food industry in the United States, and not in the way they like. So this is exactly what I want my government to do. Now, maybe labeling is enough so that I still have choices. They label cigarettes, but they're still legal. The alcohol is still legal. So I don't know if they need to make any of this illegal. But yeah, when my government wants to keep me better informed and tell me that the interest rate on this loan is the same as this one, and what's in the food, yeah, I like all that. So I could not be happier about that. That's pure golden age stuff. You don't get that. You don't get this without Trump and without RFK Jr., I think. Meanwhile, I saw a story, Sam J over in Twitchy is writing, there's some Democrat who is on the floor of the Congress, I guess, talking about openly organizing a shadow government. So he actually had names of all the Democrats who would operate as a shadow government, but it sounds worse than it is. What he meant was that for every appointed person in the Trump administration, that there'd be somebody who would be their critic. You know, there's somebody whose job it was to make sure they didn't go too far and do bad things. That's fine. Basically, he's just using a colorful way to say that they're going to be critical of things that Trump does. So it sounds like a much more shadowy, terrible thing, but really it's just they're going to make sure they have critics for everything Trump does. Brendan Carr at the FCC is working against the big censorship cartel. And he notes that, this is on X, he notes that Facebook, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and others have played a central role in the censorship cartel, as he calls it. Now, if you don't know about NewsGuard, my understanding is it's an external entity that the big tech companies used as their source of what's information and what's disinformation. Except NewsGuard is just a censorship organization that will politically censor anything they don't like and have a reason. So he says the Orwellian named a NewsGuard, along with the quote fact-checking groups and ad agencies, are enforcing the one-sided narrative. In other words, they're censoring one side of the political conversation. And so he wants to dismantle this, what he would call a cartel of these fact-checking disinformation people. And he says that the big tech's liability shield, that's called Section 230. Now, Section 230 lets them not be sued, the big tech companies, if all they're doing is passing along information, so they're not the ones creating it. But if you're using these fake NewsGuard or fake fact checkers or working with advertisers to limit one kind of speech and promote another kind, then you're just censors. And he's asking for more information so he can take a look at this and maybe dismantle it. Michael Schellenberger, of course, is the superstar reporter who helps us understand this whole NewsGuard thing. And Mike Benz, of course, one of the strong voices there. By the way, if you're not following Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z, and Michael Schellenberger, sounds just like it spells, you're not really well informed. And I'd say Glenn Greenwald as well. So there's some people you need to follow, or you're just not going to know anything. They're one layer below the reality that you can see on TV. So if you can't get to that lower level of base reality where everything's rigged and you know exactly how, everything's confusing. So you got to get to the Schellenberger, Benz, Greenwald level of understanding of the world, and then everything starts making sense at the same time. It's kind of wonderful. Couldn't do it without X. All right, David Sachs points out another systemic problem we have. He had a good monologue that was on X, I saw, that the executive branch is in charge of a whole ton of people who work for the government, except that it can't fire them. So there's a whole bunch of the government that can't be fired for doing a bad job. So of course things go wrong. Of course, it's the wrong incentive. Again, this is what Democrats are bad at spotting. Republicans are better at looking at the entire machine and the incentives that are driving it. So that's why they're better system designers. And so Sachs points out this is a system design problem, and there's no accountability for just massive amounts of government employees. They have a local boss but it's just so hard to fire anybody, at least at the highest level, so hard. It just doesn't happen. So, yeah, that needs to be fixed. Imagine if America could create a government that actually was efficient. Because imagine the competitive advantage that would be. Because I don't think China's government is super efficient. I don't think Russia's government is super efficient. I don't think the European Union members are super efficient. Maybe some are. Sometimes I tell you that Estonia has its shit together. I think it does, actually. I think there is one country, Estonia, that just sort of does a lot of things right, just sort of quietly being smart and excellent every day. But just imagine the competitive advantage and our survivability as a nation if we could make our government accountable and efficient. It's a big, big ask, but all the right people are on it. All the right people. So we'll see. All right. And then, so apparently Zelensky has said out loud that he thinks the war will end faster under the Trump administration. And here's the dog. This isn't quite the dog not barking, but it's the awesome thing that you didn't notice. So here's the thing that I think you'll agree is true, that this is not an exaggeration. Trump has ended at least 2 nuclear confrontations just by being Trump. Let me explain. Do you remember how all the smart people are saying, okay, well, I might like some of Trump's policies, but his character. Let me tell you about his character. His character. Well, let me tell you what his character did. His character took the risk of nuclear war between Ukraine and Russia to 0. Do you know why? Because both Russia and Ukraine think he's the big dog and that the big dog is going to come in and settle their problems. What would be the odds of Russia launching a nuclear war before Trump gets into office? None. None at all. They'd have nothing to gain, right? Trump, by his character, remember the part you didn't like, his character? His character ended the fucking risk of nuclear war in Ukraine and Russia. Admit it. Admit it, you fuckers. Admit it. That was his character. It wasn't his policy. It wasn't his height. It wasn't his orange fucking hair. It was his character. They saw his character coming and they took the risk of fucking nuclear war off the table. It's the second time. North Korea, same thing. Do you remember when Trump comes into office and we're worried, literally worried, that North Korea was going to launch a nuclear attack? Do you know what took that completely off the table? Now, something could happen accidentally, but clearly we're not looking at an intentional nuclear war. Do you know what took it completely off the table? His character. His character. Because he went and he shook hands with Kim Jong-un, which nobody else would have done. And Kim Jong-un said, oh, well, why would I nuke my friend? Why would he? So Trump's fucking character protected us from 2 nuclear possibilities already, right? And we act like that's the worst part of him. It's not the worst part of him. I don't know what's the worst part, but it's the good part. The character. The character is what's getting everything done. Do you know why people are scrambling around in anticipation of him doing changes? Is because his character is, I'm not going to quit. There's the character. If you know he's not going to quit, you're going to make adjustments before he gets there because he's coming and he's not going to quit. And you're not going to talk him out of it with your bureaucrats this time. And this time he brought a whole fucking pirate ship full of people who don't quit. Do you know what Elon Musk does? Doesn't quit. And you all know that. He doesn't quit. Character, right? Character is fight, fight, fight. Character is that no matter how far you got pushed down after that devastating loss in 2020, you get back up. You do it again. Character. Now, am I going to defend every sex choice he ever made or every insult he ever made? No, and I'm not going to criticize it either, because I don't care. But the part of his character that I do care about just made me a whole lot safer from nuclear war, right? So I feel like the reason I'm worked up about it is we're seeing the greatest display of character solving problems that you've ever seen. What? Since who? Since who? This is like a once ever. You're not going to see this again. In your lifetime, you'll never see this. His character is solving massive problems all over the place. Do you think anybody else could tear down the government with Elon Musk and get him to partner with him? Do you think anybody else would have Bernie Sanders saying, you know what, you're definitely right about this? Do you think anybody else would have the Democrats completely destroyed? Trump hollowed out the Republican Party and fixed it. And then he defeated the Democrats, and he's forcing them to fix themselves. He's dismantling the entire censorship regime. He probably will, with Elon and Vivek's help, figure out how to solve our financial death spiral. He almost certainly will put us in a position where our energy and our AI stuff is competitive and maybe better than that. He almost single-handedly will probably fix our international trade situation. I suspect he's going to do a lot on the border. We've never seen anything like this. And it's character. It's just if you focus on the wrong parts, let's say it's the not the active ingredients. Oh, that's the way to put it. You know, you look at a product as active ingredients, a medication, then it's a bunch of inactive ingredients. Well, that's like Trump's character. The inactive ingredients are he insults Rosie O'Donnell. That's inactive. It doesn't bother you. The active part is he just stopped 2 nuclear wars. That's the active part. He'll fire somebody if he needs to. Biden didn't fire anybody. Trump will fire people. That's the active part. All right, and he's doing great. So the golden age is here. Jonathan Turley writes about there were 4 Californians who had some kind of a insurance scheme. They had some luxury vehicles that I guess they wanted to collect the insurance on instead of doing whatever else they would do with them. So one of them dressed in a bear outfit and pretended a wild bear was destroying all 3 cars, and then they made sure it was on security video. So they took their security video to their insurance companies and said, how about some insurance payments? Because look at this bear that destroyed our luxury cars. And the insurance company said, you know, that looks exactly like a person in a bear costume. And sure enough, one of them had purchased a bear costume. It was dressed as a bear. And do you know how they figured out it was a man in a bear costume instead of a bear? It was simpler than you'd think. He didn't shit in the woods. No. He used indoor plumbing. And then they're like, well, no, bears shit in the woods. You're not a bear. So that's how you tell. So thank you to Jonathan Turley for that important story. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Saturday, and it's time for us to have a great weekend. The holidays are coming. I'm sure already, probably most of you have ordered your Dilbert calendars. Go to dilbert.com to see the link to go purchase that. It's the only place it'll be. You cannot buy the Dilbert calendar on Amazon or anywhere else, only at the link that you can find at dilbert.com. And then I've also got 4 books. 3 of them are sort of re-edited versions, and 1 new one, Reframe Your Brain. And at least one of those books and or the calendar will fit every person in your gift-giving universe. And if that's not enough, I will make more. You tell me what you need, I'll make it so that you have gifts. All right, that's all I got for now. I'm going to go talk to the Locals subscribers privately because they're special. And I'll talk to the rest of you tomorrow, same time, same place, and I won't be early tomorrow because I'll be able to figure out how to read that darn clock. All right. Bye for now. Locals coming at you in 30 seconds.